So the age-old rivalry continues between Eric Bischoff and Tony Khan. This time it involved a tweet in the announcement, actually, that the Strictly Business podcast would be coming to an end, and I do have thoughts on that as well. But let's jump on over to Twitter and see what's causing all this mess. Jon Alba, the host of The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy and Strictly Business with Eric Bischoff, posted the following yesterday. Unfortunately, this week's episode of Strictly Business with Eric Bischoff will be the last edition of the podcast. Again, I will have thoughts on that later. Eric's schedule is loaded these days. Sure. And for good reason, he'll be putting his efforts into other endeavors. Sure. I'm extremely grateful to have had a chance to share a platform with Eric for the past 2 years. We are 38 years apart and have wildly different views of pro wrestling, storytelling, and even life. Yes, they do. Yet, I think that this has been one of the most fascinating parts of our dynamic and never fails to make for engaging conversation. And that's probably the reason why it's done. I have always said Eric is one of the greatest television performers in wrestling history, and doing this show has been one of the most exciting challenges of my career. He has made me a better broadcaster, helped open new professional doors for me, and has been extremely gracious to me personally. Sure. I hope you'll join us this week as we bid farewell to the show. Thank you for the ad-free shows team as well for always making it featured programming, and everyone who has tuned in the past couple of years. Hopefully we've been different than the rest. Different than, in parentheses, a la Eric Bischoff. So that was a very nice post by Jon Alba. Very kind of John to have great, gracious words for Eric Bischoff. As I record this, that final episode will air tonight. I'm sure I'll be covering it just because especially if it's newsworthy in itself, but I think it's newsworthy just for the fact that it's the last episode. And I always loved this show. I always thought there was great tidbits of information coming out of this. But Eric Bischoff and Jon Alba really clearly didn't get along at all. Eric would always just kind of talk down to Jon like he's a fucking child. And just really kind of derogatory at times. Never said anything outwardly mean, but, Eric would be quick to kind of jump in and be like, well, that's fucking stupid, and just kind of put it down. And, he didn't have that same kind of camaraderie that he seems to have with, like, a Conrad Thompson. So I think, personally, that has a big factor. I just don't think Alba and Bischoff get along, and I think that's a huge factor of why their show is ending. But that's not the big news tidbit that came out of this announcement. It was a nice announcement, and it was news in itself. But it was what was in the comments section that really set this whole thing off all over again between Tony Khan and Eric Bischoff. Let's go ahead and check out the comments section. And here you see sunsetting this fraud of a business podcast before the next AEW media rights deal is a wise choice. Hashtag AEW Dynamite from none other than Mr. Tony Khan himself. Let me just point out that this tweet came in at 3:58 in the morning. A 4 a.m. tweet dissing Eric Bischoff and his podcast with Jon Alba. What the fuck, Tony Khan? This is the kind of stupid shit that people get pissed at you about tweeting. And it was unprovoked. There was nothing about AEW or Tony Khan or anything at all said. This was a nice little post by Jon Alba announcing the end of this podcast he has with Eric Bischoff, and Tony Khan at 4 a.m, high on cocaine, I'm sure, drunk as fuck, probably a few cocktails in, took it upon himself to throw his fucking 2 cents in, like anybody cares. It wasn't provoked. It wasn't about him. He just chimed in because he doesn't like the podcast, because Eric frequently talks shit about Tony Khan. Fine. he can be mad at Eric Bischoff for talking all the shit and stuff, but this wasn't about him. He threw himself into this conversation. So what he gets coming to him is all on him. And Eric Bischoff did respond first in the tweets section. Let's take a look at this. Eric posts, "A money mark with no talent other than spending daddy's money. Going all the way to Canada to draw less than 4,000 in one of the hottest pro wrestling markets in North America. Talk about wise choices. Strap in. It's going to be a fun day." Oh boy. Eric then took it a step further and actually announced the name of a new podcast that he's doing in place of the Strictly Business podcast called Wise Choices. And we'll get to a clip from that in a minute, but Wise Choices, obviously inspired by Tony Khan saying that it was a wise choice to sunset this podcast. Eric Bischoff commented on his new podcast and Tony Khan. "Hey, Tony Khan, check out my new YouTube show, Wise Choices." In parentheses, "We premiered tonight and had an amazing audience who had a lot to say. There are some nuggets in there that may help you get out of your 55 straight week drought. By the way, we will be digging into your YouTube numbers very closely on Monday's episode of Wise Choices. Should be fun. And thanks for inspiring the series." Then adds in AEW's ratings for Dynamite to kick him in the balls while he's down. Tony Khan just can't help himself. Every time he opens his mouth or opens his phone, his Twitter app, he makes an ass of himself. And he got owned again by Eric Bischoff, who has now started an entire podcast named after, based on Tony Khan's tweets. And I do have a clip from the very first episode of this podcast and Tony Khan being addressed by Eric Bischoff.
And I woke up to this tweet. It's like 6 o'clock in the morning, my time, when I wake up. And here's Tony Khan responding to a very nice post that Jon Alba, my co-host on Strictly Business, put up, announcing the fact that we were going to stop producing Strictly Business because, quite frankly, my travel schedule is turned into a nightmare over the next 3 months. John was just doing a nice thing, letting everybody know. And Tony decided to call me a fraud, Jon Alba a fraud. And of course, Tony Khan at 4 o'clock in the morning says, "Sunsetting this fraud of a business podcast before the next AEW media deal is a wise choice." Hence the name of this show, Wise Choices.
Editing Seth here, and as I'm working on the video, the Strictly Business podcast did air, and Eric Bischoff and Jon Alba did address the tweet from Tony Khan, so I'm going to insert that here now.
And get involved in the show. It's nuts, and it all happened because Tony decided at 4 a.m. to call me and you in this show a fraud. Took exception to.
Well, I was
fraudulent about this show.
If I can be very honest, Eric, I was disappointed because I feel, as I kind of hit on at the beginning of this podcast, I at least have done my best to provide a fair rebuttal to pretty much anything you say, good or bad. And it's very important to me in anything I've ever covered. I've covered Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NBA, the NHL. I've been covering Tony Khan before I covered him in wrestling because I covered the Jaguars. And being fair is always something that's been paramount to me. And whenever you've said something that I've vehemently disagreed with about AEW, I always push back in what I feel is a very fair way, to the point where you then roll with it and say, "I'm booking from the clouds," you know? like, I feel I have been extremely fair, maybe even to a fault. And to have something like that put out there publicly and to say that your work is fraudulent, when you've been trying to do things the right way, it's a very hurtful thing. And I've got thick skin, so it doesn't bother me that much, but it just made me think a lot about kind of the state of this industry. And when people do things from the right intention and how other people perceive that, it was disappointing. It was disappointing. And that's really all I just want to say about that. And it's not going to change how I view or cover AEW. It was disappointing.
Yeah, and I know how you feel. I hope that you don't feel that way for more than another 20 minutes and then just get beyond it, because I honestly don't think Tony Khan was calling you a fraud necessarily, or I think Tony was he wanted to take a shot at me and refer to me in this show as a fraud, and probably didn't give a damn about you. I will admit that, but I don't think it was really targeted to you.
See, busy my ass. He's not sunsetting the Strictly Business podcast because he's too busy and has all these other things to do. He's got this new show that he's starting now that he was able to just do on a random Thursday ass night. And then he's also doing more content with Conrad Thompson over on 83 Weeks. They're going live after pay-per-views and after press conferences, and they're doing this and they're doing that. Eric is picking up more time on YouTube, and he's been announcing this. I'm going to be doing more YouTube. He doesn't go anywhere. He sits in his goddamn house all day. So you can't tell me that he couldn't find the time to have a podcast with Jon Alba. Those guys just don't get along. Watch any episode of that. And Eric treats Alba like a stupid mark. Alba is sort of pro AEW, at least defends them, or at least has an excuse ready anytime Eric's like, well, AEW this and that. Alba tries to defend it, and then Bischoff rips off his head and shits down his throat, which Bischoff does. That's what he does, especially if he perceives you to be weaker than him, or he doesn't respect you. He doesn't have that same kind of relationship with Conrad, and him and Conrad go at each other sometimes, but though you can tell the respect is there. Bischoff did not have any respect for Jon Alba, and I couldn't tell that Jon Alba really liked Eric Bischoff all that much either. They both looked cringe and unexcited to even be together on the pod. It was a chore for Bischoff, and now that it's done, Bischoff is free to do whatever the fuck he wants. Alba's free of the Eric Bischoff oppression, the drama that he's getting from that. This Wise Choices show, at least for the first episode, was really just taking questions from the internet and that sort of thing, and burying Tony Khan, of course, which is Eric Bischoff's favorite pastime. But Tony, as said earlier, Tony stepped into this one. Eric even mentioned on the pod that there was a time not too long ago, within the past year, that he reached out to Tony Khan and still offered to help him. Like, hey, man, I know you can tell me to fuck off if you like, and I'm sure you will, but if you ever want to talk about anything, any of this shit that you're going through, that you're doing, you want to talk it out with somebody that has been there, done that, seen that might be able to give you a little bit of expertise, a little knowledge, point you in the right direction, please feel free to reach out. And according to Bischoff, Tony responded by saying he missed him at the AEW shows. Well, it doesn't sound like either one of these guys miss each other the way they interact online. I mean, look, I'm here for it. I love this kind of shit. This is the kind of shit that gets my channel, keeps my channel going, right? Gives me content to put out. As soon as I saw that Tony Khan took a shot at Eric Bischoff and Bischoff was responding, I knew I had a video I could do, and I would have a lot to talk about because it's fun to talk about this kind of shit. But Eric was in the right here. This was completely unprovoked. This had nothing to do with Tony Khan. If Tony wants to take a shot at Eric for something Eric says on his show, he has plenty of opportunity. Basically, every time Eric opens his mouth on a podcast, Tony has the opportunity to chime in. And maybe that's why Tony felt justified that he could add his 2 cents here on this Strictly Business podcast. But then even the way that he said it, before the next AEW media deal is a wise choice. Like, oh, we're going to dunk on Bischoff and all the haters so hard when we get our next media rights deals that everything you've been saying for the last couple years about AEW will get shoved right up your ass. So it's a good thing that you're ending this now before you have to eat your words and talk about this. Yeah, maybe. Look, they're going to get a new TV deal. I'm not saying they're not, but I don't think it's going to be anything to brag about. It's not going to be like Netflix deal or anything like that. You know, I think AEW will get another deal. I think it'll be a slight increase, but it's not going to be what they wanted. It's not going to be what they need to go to the next level. It was pointless. It was pointless to jump in. And you know Eric Bischoff is not going to let that slide. You know you're not going to be able to just fire off a comment like that and it's not going to get retaliated against by Eric Bischoff or a bunch of marks on the internet who have chimed in on both sides, by the way. If you go in the comments, it's a goddamn war zone. You know, there's people talking about, well, actually, Eric Bischoff in 1999 was losing around $5 million per day and blah, 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 blah. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. Stop it. This isn't tit for tat. This isn't, well, Eric actually, hey, WCW sucked too. Well, maybe Eric learned from those. You know, I'm not taking sides either, but clearly AEW is struggling, right? It's not like they're flourishing and any criticism about AEW is unfounded. They're floundering right now. And dare I say that Tony Khan owes it to the wrestling business at this point to do better. That this isn't just his fig fed anymore where he can just have fun and play with his toys and do what he wants. He owes it to the wrestling business to supply a strong, competitive number two. He needs to not let his company fall to the point where they're TNA, which is basically damn near where they're at already. He needs to build this company up to be that strong number two so that the business is healthy, so that people they can compete with contracts. They can go back to WWE and say, hey, Money Mark Tony Khan is offering me this much. Can you give me that? Can you do that for me? Huh? But he doesn't. He just plays with his toys and, oh, this will be a really cool match. Boom, 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 match. Well, that was a great match. And the storyline was it's a really great match that people want to see. That's a storyline, isn't it? Look at this dream match. That's a storyline. Fuck off with your bloodline angles and shit. Meh. We got dream match storylines over here. And now I'm taking my shots at AEW, but it's frustrating because I used to love me some AEW, and I am very happy to live in a world where there's a strong number two competitor to WWE. And it's just not going to continue at this rate. But this is an highly interesting beef that I'm going to continue to keep an eye on. Bischoff and Tony, they just keep going rounds and rounds and rounds. This will never end, ever. As long as both of these people have a voice, as long as both of these people have fingers to type on Twitter with, they're going to be taking their little jabs at each other. And it's going to come from Tony Khan at 4 a.m. when he's drunk and high off cocaine and fucking everybody in the rest of the world is sleeping or should be sleeping anyway. And Tony Khan's up talking shit. And by the way, this was after Dynamite. Doesn't Tony Khan have better things to do on a TV night? Even if it's just shutting down the bar with a few of the coworkers and shit and celebrating a good hard night's work. Like, do you really need to be on Twitter on a TV night at 4 a.m? Fucking talking about Eric Bischoff's podcast? It's a mess. As far as the Strictly Business podcast, I'll probably have more to say about that when I do cover the final episode of Strictly Business. But yeah, as I said earlier, I think this is a clear-cut case of, I think they're bullshitting us. I don't believe the reason. I believe, the reason Eric Bischoff's so busy, but yet he started a brand new podcast just randomly. Just, okay, I'm going to hop online and do a full 1-hour podcast today. Unannounced, on everything, and that he's announced he's doing more with Conrad and stuff. He's not that busy that he can't do a podcast with Alba. They just don't get along. They just don't like each other. And so they don't want to spend an hour with each other every single week anymore. I get that. I understand that. But I don't know that for sure. It's just, my astute observation. But what are your thoughts? Lots, we covered lots here, lots to talk about in the comments below, lots of different angles you could take. What are your thoughts on the Tony Khan, Eric Bischoff beef? Are you team Tony in AEW? Are you team Eric and taking his shots at Tony Khan and all of that shit? Are you sad to see the Strictly Business podcast go? Did you like it? Were you a listener of it? Do you agree with me? Do you think it's just that Bischoff and Alba really weren't a good fit for each other? Or do you think that it is true that Bischoff's just too busy, even though he's got time to start a new podcast and go live and all that other shit? But he's a busy guy. Too busy for Alba, apparently. What are your thoughts on that podcast? Anything at all, leave it in the comments below. We're going to continue to follow this story and cover the Strictly Business podcast at some point, probably over the weekend or something like that. That's it. Peace, love, and pizza. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next.
Let me tell you something, brother. You can check out full episodes each and every Sunday right here on this channel, dude. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to take your vitamins and say your prayers, brother.